Augusta, good to see you. And as always, thank you for taking a bit of time out to come and have a chat. I know you've got a busy schedule, what you're doing is really interesting. So I appreciate you coming to have a chat. Let me start things off by asking you about the mission. Just tell folks, what is it you're trying to do with your business?
I think for us, my company AAA Global is a global recruitment firm specializing within quantitative and discretionary finance. So we're incredibly niche, finding talent for all the big hedge funds, banks, prop firms. So that's what we do. But I think the mission for me was much bigger than that. It was to make an impact within the recruitment industry, which has a very bad name, and kind of the focus on long-term relationships and doing good work, doing good business. And then I think the second thing was having an impact on changing the workforce in ways of diversity and inclusion and, enabling people to have a really good career in this sector. So I think for me it was twofold.
Okay. And am I right in thinking, tell me if I'm wrong, am I right in thinking that that sector traditionally has probably been dominated by men? Is that probably the case?
Yeah.
And you're trying to change that?
Yeah, it's definitely still very dominated by men. I think recruitment, when I entered recruitment, it was all men. That's changed quite a lot in the last few years. And then the sector specifically we focus in within recruitment is it's yeah, it's all men.
Hmm. Yeah, okay. So tell me about the moment when you thought this could be a global business. I mean, tell us how that happened.
I think I started the business 7 years ago in London, and so much of our work from word go was international. And I think that London is changing as a city, and I think that there's so many other financial hubs in the world. So we just took a decision that because talent is moving globally and our clients are hiring globally, that we should get people on the ground globally in places they're hiring because we want to emphasize the importance of actual relationships, and a lot of relationship building is done in person. So, yeah, we took the decision to get people on the ground. We've now got people on the ground in 5 countries, sixth country opening quite soon. So, yeah, we wanted to be global and we've achieved that. So,
Well done. And when you realized, I mean, what you were sort of saying is it's kind of born global, if you like. When you realized that was where you were going, I mean, how did you see the kind of the crux problem that you had to resolve to achieve that kind of global outcome? I mean, was it about raising money? Was it about finding premises? Was it about, I mean, what was the big problem that you thought, I'm going to have to overcome this to get to there? I mean, tell us about that.
I think that for us, fortunately, it wasn't about raising money. We've always been organically grown, but I think for us to open up globally, it was about finding the right talent on the ground to be able to recreate the same vision that we had in London in
Right.
these other countries, and to maintain brand value and maintain the ways that we do things. Because of course, when you open up different countries, sometimes the service quality and
Mm.
things you do can deteriorate. So we wanted to make sure we maintained exactly what we're doing, what we were doing in London, in these other countries. And I think for us, the main thing then was hiring the right people with the right value set, um, the right ambition. And that was the major challenge, especially when you're interviewing in countries which, English isn't necessarily their first language, and just getting the right people who are going to be loyal to the brand.
Mm. And I mean, it's very easy to say hire the right people. I mean, we'd all do that, wouldn't we? I mean, how did you do that? I mean, just give us a sense of how you approach that particular problem. I know recruiting people is what you know about, but I mean, just give us a sense of how you might do that because I wouldn't have a clue how to do that.
I think for us, like the when we look at people, we're fortunate we speak to hundreds of people, but I think that we don't necessarily look for a skill set. Like we're happy to train a skill set. We look for characteristics in
Mm.
people. So there are a few things that we look for. We look for people who are curious. So people who really want to self-learn and really are curious about the space. They want to become the best. We look for people who are resilient because it's not an easy industry. So you've got to be able to take a lot of rejection and keep going forward. And then we look for people who are honest. So people who are fundamentally going to do the right thing, even if it means even if it means not getting a deal done. We look for people who are going to do the right thing time and time again. So I think it's a characteristic traits, and then you can obviously develop questions around those things to really find people that share those characteristic traits.
And has that been difficult to do that? I mean, is it, or was it easy? I mean, was that a difficult? It sounds like quite a difficult challenge to find the right people.
It is difficult, definitely. I think talent is the hardest thing today for any company
Mm.
because most companies are trying to compete over the top, 1% of talent. And it's all in an interview, anyone can tell you anything. And it's about working out who's being honest and reading between the lines and getting to the crux of what that person actually stands for. So for us, it's always the hardest thing. Hiring is definitely the hardest thing, and I spend a huge amount of time in the company's hiring because the business is your people. It's that simple.
Yeah. And I mean, you're pretty successful now. I mean, was there ever a moment on that journey when it may not have turned out quite as successfully as it has? I mean, do you have moments like that when you've thought, oh, if I don't sort this out, I'm going to have a really big problem?
I think the journey of an entrepreneur is always stressful and it's always hard. And I think the bigger you get and the more successful you get, the harder it gets. I don't think it gets easier because I think the scale of the problem becomes bigger.
Yeah.
So I think for me, when I first started, I started the business organically. So first year and a half, 2 years just was, you learn the phrase cash is king, right? You have to really learn to bootstrap and just get things moving and quickly. And I think there's an amazing phrase which Ken Griffin always says is that, someone's got to sell or none of us are going to eat. And I think that's the key thing in the first couple of years is just getting things moving and done. Like, your website doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to start making money. And I think the first couple of years is always yeah, of course I questioned it. I went from having a very well-paying job to starting. And I think you always question it. Year three, it started to be like, okay, this is why I did this. And then now we're nearly 7 years in, there's always problems. There's always a challenge, but that's what keeps it exciting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
problems.
totally agree with you about that. I mean, that is what makes it interesting, I think. Let me ask you a question about, you touched on, getting things wrong at the beginning and, learning from that. Was there anything were there any decisions that you made early on that have now made your life harder down the track? I mean, have you had any of those kind of experiences?
I think that fortunately, I don't sit with any problems now that I created for myself at the start.
Right.
Um, but for sure, but that's because we've solved those. So I think that, when you first start, I think first two people or three people you hire are really, really important to the business.
Mm.
And, the first two, three people I hired are not with me anymore. So, that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That's okay. Um, I think that we set up a incredibly unbelievable, commission structure for our consultants at that time, which was probably a bit too good because we wanted to be the best paying in the industry, and we still are today, but we've had to alter that slightly just because, just to make it more sensible as you grow. But I think we've got over that hurdle now. So yeah, I think those are probably the couple of things that we did.
Yeah. Useful learning points by the sounds of things. Let me ask you about being the CEO. I mean, what's your take on that job? Because it's the critical job in any business like this, isn't it? You're the person that drives the whole shebang in the right direction. I mean, in broad terms, what's your take on the job?
I personally think that the three most important things of the role of a CEO is vision, people, and money. So I think you've got to be able to eat, sleep, and breathe your vision. And you've got to be able to sell your vision. You've got to be able to get people behind you and really, really live your vision as well. You've got to be what you say the company is. So I think the vision is really important. And I think that then leads to people because people, top talent, will work with you if they believe in a vision. So vision is number one. Then bringing in the right people into the organization, I think, is number two. It's just as important, but that's the second most important thing. And I think a lot of CEOs, when businesses get really large, often step back and let other people do that. But I think that's often where problems come.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the most successful businesses in the world, the CEO still does one interview with the people, the main people they're bringing in, because it's vital. And then I think three is money. Like you've always got to you've always got to stay a bit, you've got to stay very grounded and understand what's going on from the bottom to the top, because cash is king. You've got to be able to know what's going on. So I think those are the three things. I think that, I think the role of a CEO is, I think it's an incredibly difficult role. I think it's an incredibly difficult role. You've got to learn to say no. People are always pulling you in millions of directions and you're doing brought into millions of things. It's about learning to actually not take every decision, just delegate to yourself the really important decisions. Because otherwise essentially you get burnout from taking too many decisions.
Yeah, you get tangled up in too much detail, don't you? I mean, which is impossible to keep track of as well as you get bigger. The other interesting thing, there's a bit of a debate about, do you spend most of your time working in the business or do you spend time working on the business? I mean, it's a rather cliche debate. What's your take on that? And how do you sort of make sure that you have space to stand back and think about where the business is going rather than just being involved in getting all the stuff done that needs to be done every day? I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. I think you can fall into the trap of being an operator where you literally just are on this like hamster wheel and you can never really grow hugely if you're in that at that point. What I do, and I fell into that trap about a year ago when we had huge growth. And I think that what I've now done is I've I've done two things. I've done one thing which is called buy back your time, where essentially you work out how much your time is worth.
Yeah.
Then you delegate anything that is not on that amount of value add that other people can do. And then I think the second thing is actually doing really in-depth time analysis, looking over 2 weeks of where your time goes, and you realize you waste a lot of time. So I think that's the second thing. And I think the main thing that I do, which really helps me, is Wednesdays and Fridays, I do not do any meetings at all. So Wednesdays and Fridays are blocked. Like no one can put a call in my diary on Wednesday and Friday. And if it's a vital, urgent meeting or there's a client in town, yes, I'll go to that. But like normally Wednesday and Friday for me is basically empty. And the reason is because I build in time into those 2 days where I think I can just sit on a problem for like 4 hours. It doesn't matter, 5 hours. I turn my phone off and I actually that's when I work on the company 2 days a week.
Mm.
Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, I'm probably quite operational and really in depth in the team. Wednesdays and Fridays, I focus on vision and strategy and building.
Yeah. I mean, let me come. I mean, I want to come back to something you said earlier on. You mentioned about, one of the things you've got to learn is to say no. And part of the reason you have to say no is so that you don't get tangled up in lots of other stuff that is not your remit, as it were. Um, but there's another aspect to that, which is what you've just been talking about, is how you sort out what the right strategy is. And strategy is mainly about what you don't do. It's not about what you do. It's about working out, well, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, but I am going to do these things. I mean, how do you cut through the noise, if you like, to make sure that your business is focused on exactly the right things and you're not doing all the other billion things that you could be doing? I mean, how do you work out that process?
I think that that I think that that is about, as you said, it's learning to say no, and it's about working out, okay, what is the impact of this change or this direction? How big is that impact, and is that impact worth it? Is the change worth it? And I also think that there's a massive power in getting really focused on what your company does. We don't try to do everything. Like we recruit in quant and discretionary. We could recruit in the whole of finance, okay? But then we'd be generous. We wouldn't beat all the other
Mm.
hundreds of firms at that business. You can. become the best if you really focus. And I think that a lot of owners of businesses and CEOs often they start with a product or they start with a service, and it's very easy to add on, add on, add on, add
Yeah.
on, add on it when you've got money. But actually, in my opinion, the better thing to do is to be like, how do we get 1% better? How do we get 1% better at what we do instead of adding on? Because that often provides far more scale.
Yeah. I mean, what you're saying is do less, but do it better.
Do less, but do it better. Definitely do less, but do it better. Cut, constantly cull till you only do one thing, but you do it the best and then dominate that market and then market that product, like market that.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of that experience of doing all, I mean, what you've just described are potentially lots of difficult decisions that you've had to make. I mean, have there really been things that have kind of got you out of your comfort zone on that sort of on that journey?
I find it hard to say no. I'm fortunate I've got hundreds of people who reach out to me a lot, want to meet, and because I used to be I was recruiting a huge amount before I started this business. So it's about learning to just say, I'm really sorry, I don't have the time, and passing that on to somebody else who's also capable. And it's about learning to say no to new business lines you could do, which you know you could be successful in, but instead focus and get better at what you do. It's about learning to it's about learning to delegate, pass things on, tasks that maybe, you're great at them, of course, because you've practiced them millions of times, but actually you shouldn't be doing them. So it's about doing the difficult things. It's about doing the difficult things because the easy things, other people actually you can pass it on. So
So it's
that's
about
how
getting out of your comfort zone quite a lot then.
all the time, all
Yeah.
the time,
Yeah.
because growth is painful, right? If you're not in your comfort zone, you're probably not growing.
Yeah, yeah. Both as a person and probably as the business, I guess. And the flip side to the coin, I mean, have there ever been times when you wished you'd been even bolder? I know you have been quite bold with some of the things that you've done, but have you ever thought, kind of, wish, when I look back, I wish I'd pushed the boat out a little bit more?
I think you can always do more. I think you can always be bolder. But I'm also quite glad that when I look back, I'm also quite glad at having had obviously great, very strong growth, but also steady growth, because I think that sometimes I would rather, I would rather still be in the game and get to where I want to get to than go so bold. And that decision, either you go to the skies or you also can go to zero. And I
Mm.
think that I, I think I could have been bolder maybe on hiring decisions in the past. I'm quite selective. I'm sure there's people I've missed because of that. Um, I'm sure that we could have grown, some of our offices probably faster, but hindsight's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And they also could have not worked. And I was very grateful that, in COVID times, I was very grateful that at that time we had a fairly lean team. I didn't have to furlough anyone. We just continued and we actually grew in that time when a lot of our competitors and bigger firms were slashing because they had grown too fast. So yeah, hindsight's a beautiful thing.
yeah, absolutely. And you touched on the team. I mean, let's just explore that a little bit. I mean, give us your take on how you build an effective team. I mean, you've got lots of people, they're in lots of different places. I mean, how do you get that bit right? We've talked about the recruitment piece, get the right people, but in terms of how you build a team and you get people working around kind of common values and focused on the right things, I mean, what's your take about on those around those issues?
I think how you build a successful team, a team that works well together, is a fewfold. I think first thing is it's a value system. You have to make sure people actually have common values and common direction and a shared vision. I think then it's having the correct structure in place. So, the best manager for a certain team or a leader isn't necessarily the highest performer. It's often somebody who has the time and the inclination and they want to lead a team, and they're often the best person for the job. It's not necessarily your highest sales performer. Often it's better to leave the really big performers to do what they do best and to let people who actually want to manage. Um, I think a lot of companies have that issue. They promote people who are successful, but
Yeah,
successful don't always want to manage. They're probably better off being successful in what they're doing. Um, so I think I think culture is really key. I mean, it's not hiring a toxic or somebody who's bad for culture, even if they're great. Like performance wise, I think that for us, if we make we I believe in the phrase hire fast and fire faster in the sense that like if you hire someone who you can see is not good for culture, they need to go straight away. Doesn't matter if they're good. Because if you don't maintain your culture, you lose everyone.
Yeah. And how do you, I mean, I agree with that philosophy as well. But how do you do that remotely? I mean, you've got people all over the place. I mean, how do you keep track of the kind of culture in lots of different locations? And how do you kind of, I know you do it through a team, but how do you manage people remotely so that those things happen in the right way? I mean, it's very easy to say. It's much more difficult to do, I would have thought.
It's hard to do. I think I travel a lot, so I go see my teams, but I think it's having somebody in that country who's the head of the country or an office manager who you really trust and you really know has this, really is in the business, like really believes in the business. Because then they report in and they maintain what you're wanting to maintain. So I think that's really important. I personally like to check in with everyone in the company. So I schedule these kind of like 10-15 minute chats with every single person in the company,
Well,
probably a couple of times a year or once a quarter. It depends on the level of the person, but like just so that I'm getting bottom level. Like I want to know what's going on at the bottom and what they think of how they're getting managed and where they feel like things are bad and where things are weak. Because then you're I want to know what's going on in the business. So I have managers. I'm fortunate I have people who I trust and I think are brilliant, but I also want to know what's going on and where things can be done
it's
better.
kind of trust but verify.
Yeah, trust but verify and know what's going on and understand what's going on at the bottom because you can learn a lot from people who are entry level. You can learn a huge amount from that level. Often people tell you what you want to hear when they're at a certain level in the company, but people often entry level will tell you more, I
And the
think.
sooner you know about problems, the sooner you can sort them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And one of the other things that's interesting about remote teams is when the going gets tough, when things are difficult. I mean, how do you keep people motivated, excited, when they're, if you like, taking a beating because the market's flat or whatever. I mean, what's your take to dealing with challenging times and supporting your team through those kind of periods? I know we all have ups and downs. I mean, the markets are cyclical, but what's your take on that?
I think that so we what we do is we have a global call every Friday where every single person in the company is on that call. And I think every single Friday we will do, updates and we do training and we do other things. But I will every single Friday is kind of a best practice. I will always, talk about success stories. I'll talk about promotions. I'll talk about the good stuff. And I also think that I'm very real as a person. So I I'll tell them things aren't good. Like the market's not good. But we're here, we're good, we're continuing. You just need to have the resilience to get through this time because things turn. So I think it's about giving your team that support that they're okay, the company's okay. We'll support you through this time, but you just have got to do the work.
Hmm. Yeah, being straight with people, I guess.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
let's turn to developing new markets. I mean, you've gone into a whole series of different geographical markets in the last few years. I mean, tell us how you would approach. Let's say you were going to go into a new market. How would you approach it? I mean, are you one of these people that does a lot of research, develops a market entry strategy, employs people to come and help? I mean, or are you the kind of person that says, okay, well, we're going to go into the US and this is how we're going to do it? I mean, where would you be on that spectrum? How do you approach going into new markets?
I'm a doer. I'm an executor. I won't spend hours researching anything like that. I will see there's a demand. I'll have clients already there who want to hire and who are, there's enough to do. And then I'll start small and I'll scale. So what I'll do is I will just say, okay, for example, I said, okay, I was gonna do Mumbai. So 2 years ago, no, nearly 3 years ago now, went to Mumbai, got everything set up, used local, obviously, accountants and people to get everything set up correctly, lawyers, etc. Got that all set up, got a small 4-man office and hired, spent time interviewing, getting the right people, hired 4 people and started. So we don't do loads of research. We don't spend hundreds of thousands on market research and consultants and et cetera, et cetera. We just say, okay, we'll start small so it has time to work. Because I think if you start big, you have less time. The smaller you are in that area, you have much more time. Start small, give them the time to succeed and fund it, and then eventually it will succeed. That's
To
it.
kind of follow demand but minimize the risk.
Exactly. Follow demand, risk, keep the risk very small, and then scale once it's proof of concept.
Yeah, no, I see the sense of that. I mean, and as you've gone into multiple markets, I mean, has the business evolved a lot as you've gone into lots of different places and learned about how different parts of the world, work in relation to recruitment and what you do? And is the business evolving quickly?
Yeah, the business is evolving very quickly, and I think that the more we open up in different places, I think that you just see how different the markets are in different places.
Mm.
And I think that's why it's amazing. It diversifies your risk. And then on top of that, you have people on the ground from very different cultures. So I think that's also part of our success. It's like, when, for example, we have clients in India want to hire in India, and I have a team in India, they speak their language, they understand the culture,
Yeah.
they operate very differently. The speed is also different, the pace is different. When you go to Amsterdam, the pace is very different to India. So, but the people in Amsterdam understand that pace, they understand the way their clients want to work, and it's a slightly slower pace. In India, it's incredibly quick. And I think that you need to have people on the ground to be able to see that. Because if you're just sat in one location like London or wherever it is, and you're trying to operate all over the world, often you miss something. You miss that like
Mm.
connection to that culture and that the way they operate.
Mm. I mean, I was about to ask you about that point. I mean, but how do you make the connection? I mean, how do you find ways to make sure that because doing business in India very different from doing business in London. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you make the necessary connections so that if you like, how to do things in India and how to do things in London, so they're done the right way without diluting all the other things that your business stands for and that are so important to you? I mean, how do you manage that?
I think that we have different sets of clients. So, for example, my Indian team will work on with clients in India, and then my London team are working with clients in London and Europe and the US. And I think that it's clients want different things, so they
Mm.
basically help provide the service of what they want, and then the thing that stays standardized across the whole business is our value system, how things are done, like things are done with a certain value system. Like our values are honest, loyal, and outstanding. So service is outstanding. We're loyal to clients and we're honest. That doesn't change across the company, but the way they do things might be slightly different, like the speed of things. Um, but the service will always be outstanding.
Yeah. Now, let me pick up your point there about the value, about your honesty value. I mean, that's a good thing. I mean, I don't think anyone would dispute that. That might create problems for you if you're in an area. I mean, India is a good example where there was quite a lot of corruption. Or, certainly my experience has been there can be quite a lot of corruption in places like that. I mean, how do you manage that tension if you're in an area where there's potentially a lot of tensions or conflict between your values and how things are done in that world? I mean, how do you manage those kind of challenges? They're kind of ethical challenges, aren't they?
So I think that when I talk about honesty, okay, so if a client, for example, or a candidate, isn't honest, um, that that's their problem. We'll be honest.
Right.
So the candidate, we'll question the person, we'll ask them, we'll probe things, but we will relay back the information to the client or the client to the candidate in a truthful way, in the way it's been told. We won't try and alter information. So we stay honest. You may be in a place where things are a bit more fluid in terms of like,
Yeah.
but we stay true to that value. And I think it's about, we don't want to tarnish our name just because because there's corruption going on, we maintain our brand. We maintain what we say we're going to do.
Yeah. Even if that results in lower, you know, lower numbers, as it were, lower, poorer
Yeah,
performance.
yeah, definitely. Always. Yeah, always.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, if you look at, like, for example, like Warren Buffett always says, he says we can afford to lose, sales, we can afford to lose revenue, can't afford to lose our name.
Yeah. I mean, what you're really saying is your reputation is the most important thing.
Most important thing, always.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me take you back. Let's look back over the journey that you've been on. I mean, is there anything that you know now that you'd wished you'd known when you started out?
Yeah, for sure. Many things,
Any
many things,
examples? Give us a few examples.
many things. I'm a very different person now than I was when I started.
In what way? In what way are you different?
I just think I don't things don't affect me so much anymore. I think, like, I just doesn't affect me. I think I'm always thinking far further ahead. So, you're predicting things. Um, I used to be a very much an operator. I'm not anymore. I have a very macro view of the business. But like what I wish I knew back then, I think I would have been far stricter on who I brought into the company back then. I've developed this whole system from 7 years of success and failure. So I think that I now know exactly what I look for when I interview.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is you spot clients that are just time wasting, that are wasting your time, like essentially using you for information. And I think we work with less clients, but we work with clients that we really are very, very close to. So I think that's also quite important. So again, it's learning to say no. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was about to say it
yeah,
reflects that ethos, doesn't it?
it's learning to say no. So I think learning to say no is one of the biggest things. And I'm very, very strict with my time these days. Really strict.
Yeah. And is there anything that it's kind of the converse to that. Is there anything that you paid attention to at the beginning that you now realize was a bit of a waste of time and has very little impact or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I paid attention to certain clients, maybe because maybe they were bigger names, or maybe they were, I thought, okay, that's got a huge opportunity, and just it was a waste of time. So definitely, I think I spent honestly, I think I spent too much time originally, like, thinking about, okay, got to get everything perfect in terms of, like, this contract, this everything perfect, but actually I could have waited longer to do all of that. So I think the key is to say no, and is also to not to strive for perfect. It's often to just get things moving, to get things done.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what achievements, I mean, I know you've achieved a lot, but what would you say are the things that you're most proud of when you look back on that journey?
I think that we really have built a firm that people want to turn up to work. So I think it's a firm that people they really like working at this firm. And I think that we are gradually having, because of that, an impact on the whole, like on the industry itself, because people are starting to see you can do things well and still be successful. So I think that I'm quite proud of that. I'm also quite proud of the diversity in the firm, the fact that we've managed to open up globally and have people from, all nationalities in the firm. We have many women in the firm, and I think that we've created a place that people want to work. I think that's amazing.
Mm. Yeah, no, it sounds it. Well done. Um, and what advice would you offer to somebody that was about to embark on a journey like yours? Any particular hints?
Um, I think an entrepreneur starting today, I think that if I was starting today, I would be very conscious of AI and making sure you can use it in your business, and making sure you can use it well, and that it's not going to, take over your business. So I think that's one thing, just because that's a bit of a trend right now. I think that's really important, the time we're in. I think the second thing is hire fast, fire faster. If somebody comes in the door and they're not right, then take decisions quickly. Don't wait because, just waiting for what's going to happen is going to happen. So just take that decision. It's not easy, but take that decision
Yeah.
and move fast. And I think then probably the third thing is you've just got to learn, like you should have a culture, like the Microsoft culture is like the culture of yes. You should have a culture of yes where all ideas are explored briefly. Like, for example, if somebody has an idea of a system to improve, whatever, that should be explored. But once it's explored, you have to be decisive and say no to most things. So I think that it's about learning. It's about learning to say no.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you a couple of final questions before we wind up. You've talked a lot about the journey that you've been on, fascinating journey, and been very successful, which I'm very impressed with actually. Tell me about a few of the exciting things that you've got on the horizon.
I think I think one of the really exciting things for us at the moment is we are going to be opening up in the US, so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It's the next step for us at some point. It's just yeah, but that's definitely on the horizon. I think that we are we definitely in the space we operate in. I think that we've got to a point where um, we're fortunate. We've done well. We've got a lot of traction, so people are talking about us, and I think that's really exciting. So it's been 7 years of building to get to a point where,
Seven
some
years of 7 years to get you to an overnight success.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Overnight success. Yeah.
Yeah. No, one last question. Which is not actually about you and your business, but about the industry that you're in. What you mentioned AI changing a lot of stuff in particularly knowledge-based or data-based industries. Give us your thoughts on the way that AI might impact on the world of recruitment. What's your take
I
on that?
I think it's going to have a huge impact on.
In what sort of way?
I think that I think a lot of a lot of companies are probably going to be able to do a lot of their own internal hiring
Yeah.
because of AI, because it speeds things up and it speeds processes up. I think they're going to be able to reduce the number of people. So I think AI will make a big difference in that way. Automated messaging, all that kind of stuff. Um, but I personally think that in recruitment as a whole, I think that recruitment as a whole will survive. The people who will survive in recruitment the longest will be the people who build long-term relationships because it's going to become far more about that. People will do business with you and want to do business with you because they want to pick up a phone to somebody and there's a human element, okay? When a candidate wants to move firms, they want to speak to a real person. They want to liaise with a pe person. So I think it's going to become all about the recruiters who will survive long term are the ones who have got really good relationships. Um, it's a network at the end of the day. AI won't be able to beat that for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exciting times, eh?
Yeah.
Augusta, thank you for sharing that story. I mean, what a brilliant. It sounds like a really great journey, actually. Looking at it from the outside, it sounds like you've had a great time. I'm not saying it has been easy, but it certainly sounds like it's been interesting. So thank you for taking a bit of time to share that story, and good luck going forward. I'm sure there's lots of exciting things that will be happening, and I'm sure you'll ride that roller coaster very successfully. So thank you for
Thank
coming on.
you.
Cheers, Augusta. See you soon.
Yeah.